Yes, you can clap. Thank you. Good morning.
Good morning.
And welcome to Unity of Charlotte. Tiff, can you bring me down just a little bit here? Thank you. My name is Marty Bacher, and it's my privilege always to welcome you into the community. I have the privilege of serving as the senior minister and spiritual leader and all kinds of titles, actually, it turns out. But it's always a pleasure to stand before you and welcome you on this morning and invite us just to open our hearts to the spirit of the divine, to knowing the truth of who we are, to allowing something to be realized within us and in our lives. So if you're joining us for the first time, we just want to welcome you. We want to invite you into the community and just make you feel welcome. We are here to love and support you. If you have questions about the community, if you haven't received a packet, you'll see some folks with blue ribbons, and they're here to help and serve. We also are here to spiritually support you, and so if you're in need of prayer, we invite you to complete a prayer request. You can do that at the box in the lobby, or you can also go online to do that at unityofcharlotte.org. Let us move inward now as we simply ground ourselves in the awareness, the realization, and the recognition of this one life, ever present, always available. The one life with 10,000 names we recognize as the source and the substance of all that is. And we are bold enough in this moment to realize that that life is our life, that it is expressing in and through and as all of creation, and through each of us gathered here. So today I'm giving thanks for the blessings of realization, of recognition. I'm knowing for each of us gathered here that we are a divine spark, that the life of God is lived through us. And so we allow this to be a time of recognition and remembrance, of allowing Spirit to guide and direct our thoughts, our words, and our activity, allowing joy to be realized at a deep level, to find our bliss and to allow it to be expressed through us. And so I give thanks for each and every person that is a part of this spiritual community, for all of those who come together to provide this service, this place, and all of the activities that go forth. We know we're part of a holy and sacred mission to help the world wake up to the realization of who we are. And so I'm knowing that today, this day, as we continue our sacred journey, that which needs to be realized is realized. That which needs to be released is let go. That we continue to know the truth and to live that truth in every aspect of our life. So I'm truly, truly grateful. I bless this time. I know it's good and very good. And so through the power of the living Christ, I speak this word, I release it into the infinite law. It is so. And so together we say, and so it is. Amen.
I'm reaching out to know the divine. I'm reaching out to know the infinite. Yeah, forever is already mine. I'm reaching out to feel the infinite. I'm reaching out to know the divine. I'm reaching out to feel the infinite. Yeah, forever. till the infinite. Yeah, forever is already mine. I'm already there. I'm already home. I'm already safe in my eternal soul. I'm already there. I'm already home. I'm already safe in my eternal soul. I'm already there. I'm already home. I'm already safe in my eternal soul. I'm already there. I'm already home. I'm already safe in my eternal
So I invite you to join me in our affirmation for this month. Today, I awaken to my divine potential. Spirit within me guides my sacred journey. I honor my past, I celebrate my future, and I live in the present. My life is continually expanding in ways of joyful self-expression. Today, I awaken to my divine potential. Thank you. As you know, this month we are working from the power of myth and looking at this sacred journey that we are all on. The inspiration today comes from Jean Houston from a wonderful book, The Search for the Beloved. And she talks in a passage about the emergence of global spiritual sensibility. She writes, "There is no question that we are the gods that our ancestors told stories about. We fly from one part of the globe to another in a matter of hours. We instantly communicate over thousands of miles. We can commit mayhem in moments, move mountains in minutes, and every night we sit in front of our magic picture box and find out what all the other gods are up to. This divine activity is, of course, the workings of our new technology, which prosthetically extends our hands and eyes and nervous systems and gives us capacity once regarded as mythic. We are magnetized through space and time. Our sense is enlarged, our whims accelerated. But what has been amplified is an earlier version of ourselves, just as the gods that we have become are very early editions of goddedness. What is the next edition? We are at a time in human history and planetary development when we are becoming aware of the stupendous unconscious knowledge and skillful orchestration that is going on in ourselves, as well as the outer cosmos all the time. We are at a crossing point in human history, and before and after this point, there is a chasm of unimaginable dimensions." She goes on to write, "We have seen how the earth has grown through us a brain and nervous system. But now these systems need to grow a larger psyche to contain them, to learn how to use them. Thus, the task of our time, evolutionary governance, is one of matching the increasing complexity of external reality with a corresponding increase in the depth and breadth of our psychic reality. Our biological equipment, especially our brain, is gifted or cursed with a prodigious loaded latency. It can be argued that we have scarcely needed our brain's capacity and range, except perhaps during the Ice Age for survival, and perhaps again today for survival and transformation. Meister Eckhart, the great medieval German mystic, spoke of our being planted with God seeds, that we can bring forth gods. Our loaded latency is now ready to be born, to be schooled, to be grown, to be used to co-create the world and ourselves, as well as to nurture the psychogenesis of what we have called God's. We are in a time of transformation. We are in a time, as Jean Houston says, that life is changing and we must evolve and grow with it. And so how grateful I am to have these principles that help me evolve, to know the truth even in the midst of chaos. Thank you. So we have today a very special young lady who's not only gifting us with her music, but is celebrating her birthday. So for her birthday, she's giving us a gift. Please welcome Susan Caney.
boat is sitting on the water beyond time and space. This is your way. This is your grace. Om Namo Gurudev Namo. Om Namo Gurudev Namo. Om Namo Gurudev Namo. Gurudev, Gurudev Namo. Gurudev, Gurudev Namo. Gurudev, Gurudev Namo. Gurudev, Gurudev Namo. Namo, Namo, Namo.
That's okay. Thank you. That's okay. Happy birthday, young lady. Wow. So amazing. There's something wonderful about that, singing in words that we don't understand, because it allows us to resonate with the vibration of the words. You know, we know that the sound Om is the universal sound of the universe, and so in chanting, there's a resonance that happens for us. I've been thinking about this idea as we move into Palm Sunday and Holy Week in the Christian tradition, about this sacred time and how powerful it is to use these events as our own journey, as opposed to just reading the stories and thinking about it, but really understanding. See, it's my belief that I came to in understanding the metaphysical interpretation of Bible is that this is our story. It's not necessarily a historical document, although there's history there. And it's not necessarily a literal document, although there's literacy there. And it's not necessarily all one thing, but what it is a compilation of consciousness and stories of consciousness. And so as we've been talking about the sacred journey, we are reminded that we are all on this. I'm gonna. If you would give me that next slide, Jim. I'm gonna do a quick review for those who were not here last week, so you don't think I'm immediately jumping into heresy when I say certain things, because I do know that there are certain things that trigger a response. But when we look at the idea that Joseph Campbell so beautifully articulated and that has been used by many others to understand a journey, we see that we are all on this journey of becoming. And so what we find in mythology, with amazing consistency, no matter the origin, whether it's Western or Eastern or African or the mythology of the plains or the mythology of the forest, you see certain commonalities which he put forward. And what he says is when we are on the hero's journey, we start off at a place of our ordinary world, where we're living in what is known. And then something calls us to the adventure, or sometimes thrusts us into the adventure. A teacher of mine once said, Pain will push you or love will pull you, but you must go through that door. And so sometimes we find ourselves when we need to leave the ordinary world of what is known, whether it's by choice or whether it's a death or a loss or something has happened that causes us to question life. And as we go on the journey, we gather gifts and supernatural awarenesses and understandings. And then we go through the journey and we cross a threshold where now we're really into it. And above that line is the known and ordinary world, and below that line is the unknown and the mysterious world. And then we encounter the road of trials, the things that are messing with us. You know? Now, this is good stuff. This is where we fight dragons and do other heroic deeds. But when it's our own life, it doesn't always feel so fun. And then all of that leads to a moment of the supreme ordeal. And the supreme ordeal is that place where we come face to face with ourselves. It is on the other side of moving through the ordeal that we find the gift or the reward, or we make the discovery of who we truly are. And then we begin our journey home, but we return home not as the same person who's left, but now in a new consciousness, the master of two worlds. So I always say that in our spiritual journey, what we often say is that we are spiritual beings having this human experience. And our goal is to achieve self-mastery. Our goal is to realize that our humanness is not bad, but that it is bringing the mastery of being a spiritual being in this human dimension that is the journey. And so when we return home, we're not the same person, but we are recognized as something more. So when we look at our Christian mythology, and I would say that with all of the respect, because one's not better, we see this journey. We see this week a whole series of things take place that follow this example. Jesus has been a carpenter from what we know. There's not a lot there from kind of the birth to all of a sudden now he's out and about. And so he's now called to go teach what he has known. And he gathers to himself others. He gathers his disciples and he gathers those who would want to know the spiritual truth and how to live in this world. And he teaches them what he knows. And they go and they begin teaching others. In Unity's tradition, Charles Fillmore put together a wonderful book called The 12 Powers of Man, where he looks at each of those disciples and attributes to them a quality of spirit inherent. So Peter is faith, and you go through the list, which are all qualities of who we are, all circling around the Christ presence. And so we go forth into the world. And so as we see this journey, we come to, so if you go through the week, so yesterday, Saturday, if we were there, Jesus would have raised the dead. Lazarus. That'll get your attention, right? And there's this wonderful story. And again, so we don't have to argue about literally true or not, because as I've said before, things do not have to be factually accurate to have truth. But there is this recognition that what you see in front of you is not what is real. What is real is an eternal life. And so this comes forth, and then the journey moves to returning to Jerusalem. Now, in the legend of the day, there was going to be a great leader who would return the Jewish faith back to its magnificence, a new teacher, a Messiah. And so many expected that Jesus was the one who was going to bring worldly power. And so the journey comes, and they are returning to Jerusalem, and interestingly, in humble circumstances, on a donkey, not on its steed. You see in this symbology that Jesus enters Jerusalem from the east. The sun rises from the east. Many religious traditions, you move to the east when you're in prayer. The king, Pontius Pilate, whatever he was, he had a title. Maybe Pontius was, I don't know, I don't know, whatever it was. He was the dude, the governor. He's on a steed on the west side of Jerusalem. You see, again, symbolically, we're talking about something coming forward out of humble circumstances. And so many people expected that this wonderful event was a new time and a new period for the Jews and for humanity. But the story goes very different, doesn't it? As we move through the story, we see that there is a series of events that take place. There are, Monday, Jesus throws a fit. I don't know. You wouldn't say that about Jesus because he's Jesus. But if I did it, you would say, Marty threw a fit. Threw over the tables and kicked out all the money changers and all that. So there was a disruption and there was a sacredness to the holy space. You see, Joseph Campbell, when he speaks about this idea of following our bliss, he speaks to us about finding that place where we know our oneness with the divine, where we know who we are. In older traditions, this is the stories of mythology, the stories of understanding, helped us reconnect with who we are. He says in our modern world, though, it's more and more difficult to find that place, that sacred space within our life, not necessarily in location, but in our life, where we are still and we are remembering who we are. When I teach prayer and meditation, I often hear, I'm just too busy to meditate. I may be even guilty of saying that myself from time to time, right? Because in our world, we got to be busy. We got to be productive. We got to get some stuff done. And all this just sitting around stuff, what's that about? Right? So in older cultures, you lived, the world was your sanctuary. And then as we became more modernized, we created spaces, amazing spaces, cathedrals, where we could reconnect with that larger dimension of life, that larger self. But Joseph Campbell says that in our modern world, we need to find those places so that we can follow our bliss, so that we can remember who we are, that we can recognize that there is that within us which is seeking to be expressed, and it is our privilege to give birth to that, whatever that is. And so bliss then requires also sacrifice. Now, sacrifice is an interesting word, but in one way it is to make sacred. And so sometimes in our lives we find that we must make something else more important than our little desires. We become parents and everything changes, right? That we would do anything for our children. There is a part of us that will do anything for other people that is triggered. You hear these stories of heroic action of people who did not know someone who jumped and leapt into action with no thought of their own well-being, but saved another. And often when you speak to these people, you say, you're such a hero. And they go, no, I just was doing my job. Or I never thought about it. You see, there's a part of us that that knows that everything is sacred and we are one. And Campbell, in his wonderful way, talks about how all of the cycle is about death and rebirth. And that in order, you see in many mythologies that the god must die so that the new life can come forward. You see time and time again. That when we are willing to die to this world, something new is born. Jesus spoke to his disciples and said to them, if you want to enter to this dimension, this consciousness of the divine, then you must be born again. And some engineer in the group said, no offense to you, Ned, some engineer in the group said, how does that work? Right? what are you talking about? You can't be born again. He said, no, not of the flesh, but of the Spirit. You see, this is an ongoing thing that in many times we must die to the old so that the new can be born. So Jesus has moved through. On Monday, they go into the temple, and when you read this with new eyes, you begin to see that something powerful has happened. You see, Rumi said to us, God is saying, be careful, my servants, and purify, attune, and expand your thoughts about me, for they are my house. You see, Jesus said, this is a sacred place. This is a place of the divine. We must recognize where we are. Now, all of these are statements of consciousness, that we must purify our being, that we must release that which no longer serves us, that we must release the ideas of separation, of otherness, so that we know our oneness. Tuesday he continues to teach, and he teaches in the parables, and we often speak of the parables with their meaning for us. And he's explaining this consciousness, this kingdom of heaven as he refers to it. But I would say that the kingdom of heaven is not a location as much as it is a state of consciousness. I often say that we all experience heaven and hell. Most of us in the room have been to both places, right? So it's not necessarily a destination, but a consciousness. And so Jesus' work, all the great masters' work, are teaching us about who we are more so than this trivialness that we often get caught in. We often get caught in the ways of the world, and we often think that if we can change the circumstances around us, we change our experience. But we know here, as we speak over and over, that it is not about changing that which is around us. It is about changing what is within us. And when we change what is within us, then the universe resonates with who we are. And things might change. Fascinating, isn't it? Reminds me of that story. Maybe it was Rumi, I don't know, one of the Eastern. He says to the disciples on the ground, look, searching. And he says, what are you doing? And he says, I'm searching for my key. And he says, well, where do you think you lost it? And he said, I think I lost it in the house. And he said, well, why are you looking out here? And he said, the light's much better out here. Right? Do we ever do that? Where did you lose it? Well, it's over there, but what I think is I'll look for it here. So we return to that state of awareness and that state of consciousness that recognizes. And then we know on Wednesday, Judas betrays Jesus. I would tell you, in your journey, never underestimate the power and the goodness of the betrayer. Some of us have unresolved and unforgiven things in our life because a person betrayed us. I was talking to a friend of mine who was going through a very difficult journey. Was married in the Mormon church, beautiful wife, beautiful children, and then at some point had to face the reality that he was gay. And so that framework was difficult for all of them. How dare you create this? And so as they walked through this journey, I remember one time he was saying, part of one of the conversations with these amazing, his children were amazing, beautiful, bright light, and they were working with this, but it's not the easiest thing. But he said something about this conversation. I said, oh my goodness, that first betrayal, what a beautiful thing. He was like, what? I said, that moment when we find out that life is not how we thought it was supposed to be. And it comes to each of us, does it not? That life was supposed to be this way, And then something happened that wasn't this way, wasn't my plan. And so death and illness and change and all those catalysts happen for us. And if we're not conscious, what we want to do is to blame Judas. We want to blame the thing that has betrayed us. When in truth, there's a wonderful Gnostic gospel that has come to light in the last number of years. And it's called the Gospel of Judas. And again, there's many, many gospels. Not all have made it to the big book. And so as we've discovered that, we realize that what was happening in early Christianity is the same thing that's happening in Christianity now. A lot of people with a lot of different opinions about what it all means. But in this idea, Judas is seen as the favored disciple. And that he was called into this sacred position so that the story could unfold. You see, there's no crucifixion and consequently no resurrection without that betrayal. So when we can begin to see those in our lives who perhaps we have not been willing to love or to forgive as seen and having served a purpose in our unfoldment. So in this moment, you see, we've crossed the threshold and now we're in the road of trials. Judas betrays Jesus. On Thursday, they move into the Last Supper, this beautiful ceremony. Of course, the disciples don't realize what's going on, but the Master understands. And they have this sacred ceremony, and he does classic, this is my blood, it is my life, this is my body, this is the bread. This is the taking of the old life to create new life. And so they have this ceremony, they go to the garden, and he takes his disciples, and I love this passage, because as they're in the garden, he invites disciples to go with him, and they can't stay awake. And he says, could you not be awake with me in this moment? You see, Peter, our faith, falls asleep. So when we look at the story of the crucifixion and the resurrection, understand where the supreme ordeal happens. It is not on the cross. It is in the garden. Because in this moment, Jesus, as he is praying to the divine, he knows what's unfolding. He knows he has given his life to something greater than himself. He has made himself a sacrifice so that others might experience bliss. He's moving into this, and he does what all of us might find ourselves doing. Dear Lord, won't you take this cup away? Does it 3 times. He is surrendering to that. That's the supreme ordeal. When he says yes to the calling, yes to the realization, and then moves, as the story comes forward, we know there's the trial and then the crucifixion, and he finds himself again between 2 others, the center point behind one who's looking back, one who's looking forward. One thief is saying, I deserve this, I was a bad person, da-da-da-da-da. One who's saying, what's going to happen to us? And Jesus says to him, you will be with me in this day. And so the story unfolds of the death and the resurrection. Now, in most Bibles, it will say, why was I forsaken? But in the Lamsa Bible, taken from the Aramaic, he says, it is for this that I was born. You see, when you understand, I believe, when we look at this story of this supreme realization that I am not this body, that who I am cannot be fully leashed until all of it is released. And so in the death comes the new birth. In the death comes the resurrection. He's placed in the tomb, and then on Easter Sunday, new life emerges. I don't know where you stand theologically on this, and it's not my job to convince you one way or the other. What I'm trying to help us understand is that this is a story for each of us. That we will all be on this trials. We're all signed up for the journey. At some level, however it works, we had got a soul. We said, you know what I really want to do? I really want to check out that place called Earth. I want to learn about earthly things. I want to experience all of that. So sign me up. We forget about that agreement, then we get here and we grow up and then we're like, I didn't sign up for this. I'm like, oh yeah, you did. You just don't remember that part of it, but you did, right? But when we understand that, that's why I say sometimes we just want to pray it all away. We get to that road of trials and we say, let's pray this away. And I say, let's pray for the guidance. Let's pray for the wisdom. Let us move through this experience so that we might surrender to the fullness of who we are. I know in my life, there have been many times when I wanted life to be different. I wanted this other thing to happen. I don't know what the other thing was. But when I come back to, this is your purpose. You see, finding your bliss is actually about finding your purpose. Why are you here? What are you here to express? What are you here to give that is uniquely yours to give? And for each of us, that's a different answer. So when we die to that old way of being, when we die to the stories of limitation, when we recognize that we are indeed the masters of two worlds, that we are spiritual and human beings, we move into the world with a different experience. And we become the light for others. That we serve others by sharing our journey. Sometimes when people are going through their trials and tribulations, sometimes they'll come to me or they'll come to whatever. They're basically, some part of them wants to say, could you just solve this? Marty, I know you have a magic wand back there in that office somewhere. Could you just wave that and make this all go away? And I say our work is not to necessarily make it go away, but to learn everything that it is here to provide for you, to become more fully who you are. And so while I can't control outcomes, I can join you in knowing that there is everything you need within you now. Those 12 powers, the infinite qualities of spirit, to guide you through this journey, to allow you to experience this. In some ways, I think of the supreme ordeal as giving birth. I don't have firsthand knowledge. I've been in the room, but I've never. But, you know, it's like when you're in it, it looks painful and messy and, you know, all of that. And then somehow when it's over, it was the most beautiful thing ever. Right? I don't know if women feel that way, but that's how everybody else talks. Oh, that was so beautiful. What? Right? Well, it must be. There's something to it because some of you do it more than once, so, you know. Right? But it's that giving birth that is the throwing forth. And so when we're in that place in our lives, when we are giving birth to something new, there are labor pains that go with it. And what do they tell us? Breathe. Push. Breathe. Push. Right? You will get through this. And when you get through this, you will find the gift. The new baby will be born. The new experience will come forward. And then you begin your new life. So, my friends, as we are in this time, this sacred and holy time, I just invite you to recognize who you are. That you are a part of a cosmic story. You are a part of a unfolding thing. We are at a point in time in history that, as Gene Houston says, our consciousness must catch up with our technology. We must recognize our oneness. Barbara Marx Hubbard just passed this week, and she was such a great person in helping us understand the interconnectedness of life. And she told us and taught us that we are experiencing a time of global nervous network. We know what's happening around the planet instantly. That is the global nervous network telling us what's going on. We have to evolve to a place where we recognize our oneness. Dare I say our unity, our oneness with each other, that will transform us into this next experience of life. And you and I are all a part of that unfolding consciousness. Let us take our spiritual work seriously. Let us pray together. As we simply breathe into this moment, as we know and remember that wherever we are on this journey, God is and all is well. That we are spiritual beings unfolding, and that we have been given by our divine inheritance those qualities of spirit, of joy and harmony and peace and love and abundance and all good. And so we are still in the recognition and knowing of who we are. The Master said, it is the Father's good pleasure to give you this kingdom. And so let it be our good pleasure to receive it. Let it be our willingness to grow and to expand and to become the Goded being. Let it be our good pleasure to bring forth greater light, greater love, greater compassion in the world. Let us know that right where we are, the divine is revealing itself through us, that every cell and system is resonating with the wholeness that we are, providing health and well-being and vitality. Let us know that right where we are abundant beings experiencing the joy and the fullness and the divine flow of graciously giving and generously receiving of this divine bounty. Let us know that right where we are, divine love is, and that it is transcending all that is unlike itself. That we see the face of the divine in all that we meet. We allow our relationships to be healed and transformed. We release in this moment anything unlike the fullness of God that we are. We give thanks for the many blessings, those seen and those yet to be realized. We bless this spiritual community, this divine idea unfolding. We bless the world in which we live. We bless our brothers and sisters. Knowing there is no separation. There's only one race, which is the human race. We bless all the creatures living on the planet. We're accepting peace on earth. We're extending goodwill for all. And as always, we bless all priests, rabbis, ministers, teachers of all faiths. For we celebrate the many pathways to the divine. In joy and in profound gratitude, then, I'm simply giving thanks. And through the power of the living Christ, I speak this word into that divine law, which brings it forth for the highest good of all concerned. And it is in profound joy and gratitude that I simply know that it is so. Join me in saying, and so it is. Amen.
Let me love in a holy, holy way. Let me love in a holy, holy way.
Oh, let me love in a holy, holy way.
Let me love in a holy, holy way.
Wonderful. Thank you. And happy birthday, sweetheart. Appreciate you so much. Appreciate our choir. Appreciate all of you. So I'd like to invite you to stand for our prayer of protection and to sing the peace song, to go forth into this holy week recognizing your divine self unfolding. Together, the light of God surrounds us. The love of God enfolds us. The power of God protects us. The presence of God watches over us. Wherever we are, God is, and all is well.